on the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the items
sir.
1 through 5?
Motion here.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Going to the regular agenda. Item 6. I will declare this public meeting open. It's a public hearing amendment to Unified Development Ordinance. Subject hearing involves considering an ordinance amending Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 of the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, to make these chapters consistent with recent changes to the North Carolina General Statutes regarding the Board of Adjustment and Section 8.2.34 to add language to address the classification of shopping centers developed prior to the adoption of the UDO, and Section 9.15 to make this section consistent with recent changes to North Carolina General Statutes regarding cell towers, and Section 12.8 to make this section consistent with recent changes to North Carolina statutes regarding off-premise advertising signs. The Gastonia Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the ordinance amendment. Presentation, Mr. Jason Thompson, Planning Director. It's going to be longer than I am.
I will try to be brief. I guarantee it. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. As was mentioned there, this is a 4-part proposed amendment set to the Unified Development Ordinance. 3 parts of those 4 deal with, as you probably gathered from the description there, deal with making our ordinance consistent with some recent changes that the General Assembly has enacted with regard to state statutes. Those affect the Unified Development Ordinance standards for the Board of Adjustment, how we regulate cell towers to a certain extent, and also how we regulate what the code calls off-premise advertising signs, but billboards is what we're talking about there. So just to reiterate, that's all this is. Those 3 parts are simply making or propose to make our code consistent with state statutes. I would be happy to elaborate on that if you would like to hear some of that discussion, but I will leave that at the discretion of the council if you would like me to go into any further detail on those.
As we all know, this is in Exhibit 6. Questions? Objection? Comments?
So the excuse me.
Go ahead.
The remaining item out of these 4 amendments is not related to changes to the North Carolina state statutes. It is, though, related to some work that city staff has been doing with some folks on some shopping centers in the community. We adopted the Unified Development Ordinance back in 2009, and it put in place a number of new or different standards for different styles of development across the city. That being said, we have a lot of existing development, of course, that is in place and has been for many years across the city, and this includes a number of large shopping centers. The current standards in the UDO that were adopted in 2009 require that certain sizes of shopping centers go for a public hearing for the issuance of a conditional use permit. So what does that mean for existing shopping centers? It means that technically, the way the code is written right now, they are in a non-conforming status. That can be important to folks when they are working on different types of land development deals. If a shopping center owner is selling that property or simply trying to refinance it, that can make life a little bit difficult, that non-conforming status. So what this amendment is focused on doing is simply eliminating that non-conforming status. In essence, saying that if you are one of these existing shopping centers that would otherwise, if you were new, would otherwise have to get a conditional use permit, you are in effect grandfathered from that requirement. It's an effort, as I mentioned earlier, on behalf of staff, of us working with some local folks. This issue came up. We recognized it. We feel like making this change would make the ordinance a little bit more business friendly. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for that proposed change.
Questions? Anyone? Okay.
So with that was all of the changes that were a part of this bundle of amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance. As you mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission did vote unanimously to approve it, and staff is recommending approval as well.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, sir. That's item 6.